Shut up and sit down.
One, two, three, four.
I like to ride my bike.
I'd like to introduce you to a podcast with a lot of charm, talent, and wit. Unfortunately, I don't have that option, so instead, you are listening to the Dialed Podcast with Matt Legrand,
Sir Ian Gibson,
Lance Hepler, and Jake Von During. Tip of the day, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. That said, you know what you've got to do, so go get her done.
I got fancy little streamers coming out of my handlebars.
I got carts in my spokes that make sounds as it flies the cars.
I got lights all around and reflectors in the back.
I basket on the front that are really useful rack.
But I hate cyclists, bike riders, people who ride bicycles.
does someone need a hug?
I'm all jacked up on Mountain Dew.
Hi, welcome back to the Dial Podcast. I'm Jake Von During. I'm here with Lance friggin' Hepler.
Lance freaking Hepler's starting to drinking early.
Booze and Hep.
What am I hitting? I'm hitting it with the LaCroix.
LaCroix,
Thanks
fancy.
to the LaCroix.
That's French for fancy water.
for crappy tasting water.
But stay tuned. Lance might be drinking something else a little bit.
No, we got to figure out what Lance and I bet on. If any of our listeners are tuning in and they remember what Lance and I bet on, I don't remember. I feel like we probably make bets like every other podcast, and I usually win all of them.
That's true.
But I don't remember what they were.
Yeah.
So it's basically like...
So I won.
Yes.
No,
so it's
I've
kind of like
lost.
making a bet with like a goldfish, because I'll just be like, oh, bright lights. Oh, wait, what were we talking about?
What happened?
All right. To his right, Sir Ian Gibson.
Aaron Gibson. Hey, hello. That's what I got to say.
He's here to party.
Come on, man. Throw some of that.
Hey, this is Gibson, and I'm enjoying my post-COVID disease-free weeks of training and having a good time.
There you go.
There we go.
There was zero British nomenclature in there.
Nope.
That's a fail.
Freaking
I've
wanker.
now been in the United States for 30 years. So.
Sawed off, you wanker.
To his right, Matt Legrand.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? You guys look fan-freaking-tastic. Fan-freaking-tastic.
Fan-freaking-tastic.
Yep.
I'll take that.
We'll take it.
That's always good. Matt, would you care to start us off
Backpedaling?
with some backpedaling?
I think that I've mostly been running trails. I've been in the water a couple of times, been coaching high school swim, which is such an odd thing because I feel like I'm a runner or
But are you?
a running coach for sure compared to swimming. But swimming's different because you can really make corrections.
Do you
and
swim
help
good
people.
enough to be able to be a coach for other people?
Yes and no.
Okay.
One of the things
I assume that you do.
this week was like breaststroke. Like we're teaching breaststroke, and I was like, hey, I can't really help you guys.
I don't.
Because I was in the water and I'm like trying to show breaststroke kick, which is the thing that I am the worst at with swimming. And I'm like this, except for you're supposed to actually go forward. You're supposed to move when you know, it's like, I'm like going nowhere.
It's not working.
It's pretty bad. Yeah,
Sweet.
that's it. I'm sure that there was some Zwifting, but I don't think I rode
Easy
outside.
peasy. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Gibbo.
Yes, I've been riding my bike outside and in. I'm deep into my extended transition season, so not particularly training. I am on a diet. I am trying to lose some weight, and it sucks. I'm hungry all the time. And so the purpose of my bike riding is just to try to increase the amount of calories that I'm able to
Thing is,
consume.
when you're calorie restricting and you try to do like a workout,
Yeah, you end up even more hungry.
yeah, it doesn't work. You can do like zone 2 and zone
Right.
1
Yes.
riding and
Yes.
be calorie restricted, but nothing more than that. Otherwise, you're not doing yourself any good.
It's always funny, too, how your mind goes straight to, like, I just did that. I'm going to eat whatever the hell I want.
Right.
Yes.
And you're like, dang it, I shouldn't have done that after the fact. And you're like, all right, we'll try again tomorrow. And then right back in the same thing over again. Oh, well.
Yeah. No, I mean, seriously, it's about timing your calories, I guess, in this at the moment. Just I have enough to finish my workout, but then I'm like, oh, that's all I've got now till dinner time. So,
Then you have to make yourself busy so you don't just sit around and want to snack.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Not much more to report.
Yep. I rode bikes.
Do you race? There's no racing anymore, right?
There's a race this weekend.
Okay.
The last cyclocross races happened down in Eugene, Oak Hill Cyclocross.
Are you going?
I'm not. It's Saturday and Sunday. It's down in Eugene. It's probably going to be wet. It was really muddy and nasty last year.
Do you need to defend your bar points?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then
I think the
why
guy
do
I was competing with, I think he injured himself, so he's not racing anymore either. He's some 60-year-old idiot like you. On the 10-barrel team.
Old guys.
Yeah. But funny enough, 'cause I've still been trying to ride outside a little bit here and there. And last night I went out right at dusk because I just got a brand new rear wheel. So I have on my road bike, I have these really nice Zip 353 wheels.
Okay.
My rear wheel, I've been riding that bike for a year, almost a year. And the rear wheel started creaking and making noise, and I could not solve it. It wasn't in the axle. It was something to do with the spokes, this Zip 350 wheel. It just, the way they rubbed against each other, it just creaked all the time. It drove me nuts.
Did you ever try to put like a little bit of grease on
Yep.
Yeah.
Tried cleaning between the spokes and then greasing between the spokes and then tensioning them all right, and it still made noise.
Just put headphones on so you can't hear it.
Just turn the music
Turn the music up.
So I finally sent it back to Zip, and they just sent me a brand new wheel.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow, thank
It's
you.
easier for them.
Yes. So they sent me a brand new wheel. I put a brand new tire on it and went out, and 9 miles into that ride on a brand new tire, I hit something and ripped the sidewall. I was trying to tell this story before, and I was all...
What do you think you hit?
Ticked up. It wasn't a rock. I think there was something in the...
There's weird stuff. Vancouver Lake, right?
I was on my way to Vancouver Lake.
Some FOD.
Some who?
Foreign object debris.
Oh, okay. FOD.
Aviation talk.
Oh.
I feel like there's a lot of like weird shipping stuff and just like trucks that are dropping metal pieces and weird stuff out there.
Just past this big section of homeless camps too, and there's more trash in the lane at the homeless camps. But anyway, I was out riding. I did not have my spare tube with me. I did have plugs. And so I plugged it and hit it with my CO2, and it lasted 200 meters. And so I went to put in it. I told it wrong before. I went to put in another plug, and I pushed the first plug all the way in. So I was trying to like put another plug right side by side, and I ended up just pushing the one plug all the way in. And I thought,
That makes sense, yeah.
so it's rattling around inside the tire, the plug, because those plugs have little metal tips on them. Yeah. So then I rode for another half mile, and it went flat again. So now I'm out of CO2, and I'm using my little tiny mini hand pump, and I pumped that thing 1,000 freaking times. I finally had to pull out I had a few plugs. I put 2 plugs in side by side so they stayed in, and that worked.
I got you home.
And then my little thing has a little knife on it so that you can cut off the excess, and I snapped that thing off while I was trying.
It is a thin little knife. I know which one you're talking about. Yep.
So the knife snapped off, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyway, I made it home. I didn't have to do the call of shame, so it held. But that tire's toast. Thank you for those 9 glorious miles. Tire. Stupid thing. I was also freezing cold because it...
Yeah.
Okay, shut up, Lance.
And then your hands are freezing trying to work on little things.
Yes, and the sun had gone down by that point.
Jake, you got any backpedaling for us?
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
I have not ridden a bike in over 2 weeks now. Per doctor's orders. I'm off the bike right now for the foreseeable future.
You're in decent shape before, so I'm guessing it's going to come back quick.
Yeah, should be. I mean, I was off the bike for 10, 11 months, and I was able to snap back probably within about 6 or 8 weeks into decent form. And by the end of the summer, I was feeling pretty good. So
3 weeks.
And this is a good time. If you're going to take time off, now it's a good time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, not really much, though, to report on my end of things. I did mention that I was having surgery, which I did this past Monday, and everything went really well. I'm still dealing with a little bit of the I don't know, post-surgical woes, just like the rehab process, but the function of the surgery was a tremendous success. So I don't know if we need to get into this right now, maybe another podcast another time, but
a whole podcast on it.
You need to come to terms with a little bit more before we can discuss it, Jake. Let's get away from it a little bit.
I do want to say one thing though. Thank you to everybody who reached out. There are so many of you, and I didn't really tell very many people, although I did mention on the podcast last week that I was having surgery. I didn't say anything about it. It's really not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but my God, did I get a lot of messages from people. So that kind of made me happy. So thank you to every one of you who reached out and wished me well and asked how things were going and asked if you could help. Super cool.
I just made fun of him over text messages.
As you should. As you should.
I texted him terrible things too.
I had like ideas for ways to like hook bike things up. I'm like, I got ideas.
Yeah.
Got ideas.
Those were fun.
You and I were on the same wavelength,
yes.
Matt.
Not supportive.
Yeah. How can
Not
you
supportive
make fun of
wavelength.
Jake in his hour of need?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we did.
I sent Lance a special picture though.
It actually didn't come through.
The picture didn't?
The picture didn't come through, so
Really?
I never saw it.
Oh, I'll have to send it again then.
Okay.
You'll get that here in a few minutes. All right. Well, anything else you guys want to backpedal?
That's it.
No.
What's next? Champ Bailey? Oh.
Let's rock out for a second here.
Nice.
Don flannel, no pants, and a mic.
Fake news, baby.
Fake news. Champ
What
Bailey here
about
with
no
all
pants?
your fake no pants news. I did walk through the house naked today a couple times just so that you guys
Thank you.
Yeah. From the washing machine to the bathroom.
Gotta get there somehow.
What's happened? Two big things have happened this last in the last couple days. Pidcock has officially left Ineos, so finally that all kind of came through. He's going to a very small pro continental team that will immediately raise the level of that team. It's called Q36.5 or something like that.
You know, they pay the big bucks. They're going to.
Is that a radio station?
Yes, it is. They're doing that to become a major player.
Correct. So I'm guessing that it's a British company. It's a cycling clothing company.
And he wants to be a leader on a team, and he needs to move to do that.
So
it all makes sense.
It'll be interesting.
Kind of.
I mean, will the team get a Tour de France invitation with him on it? Maybe not, but a Vuelta invitation? Probably. Will he be able to do all those one-day races he wants? Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Does he want a tour? Does he want to be the guy at the Tour de France?
That's a good question.
Because I'm
hasn't-
sure all of that was taken into account when he was
It was all
deciding.
taken into account. Yeah. So it's all good. I don't
Steve
wanna look
Cummings
yet.
also left the Grenadiers, right?
He
was. I
has?
think he was he was not the director sportif.
He was
but,
one of the sport directors,
was he?
but not
Okay.
the director.
Yeah. So he's left and gone to
Jayco.
Jayco. That's right.
Yeah, Steve Cummings has gone to Jayco, and they could use a little bit more help with strategy, I think, Jayco. So that could be interesting. The other big thing that happened was Remco Evenepoel crashed his bike. So he was on a training ride near Brussels, Belgium, and he got doored. So something that could happen to any of us at any time. He was riding, and there was a postal worker that opened the door right at the wrong time, and Remco hit the door. He broke his shoulder blade, he broke his wrist, and some ribs. So he is off the bike for a little while. He had to go to the hospital and have surgery to have those things repaired. So, he was riding his gold medal specialized
snapped it in
bike,
half,
and
didn't it?
Snapped the top tube in half. That bike is gone, done.
Specialized
I'm sure-
was like,
yeah.
no, we're not giving you another bike. That's it. One per customer, buddy.
So kind of a bad thing. A lot of people have shared all this hate on the postal worker.
Hold on. Quick question for you on all of this. 2 years ago, we all would have been laughing at him.
True.
Big Six went down, you know?
Yeah.
Do you still carry that same sentiment for him, or do you kind of feel a little bit bad for the guy?
I feel bad for the guy.
Yeah.
Anyone that has a bad crash like that,
I mean, you don't want to see anybody get
You don't
hurt,
want to see
but
anyone
just
get hurt.
maybe just his persona. Do you feel bad for his persona?
He's also kind of proven himself in the past year.
This is true.
To be a serious Big Six or type person. I mean, he's quite good.
He won the Olympics road race and the time trial.
Yeah, he's
both
had
big races.
He had a
World
great
champion,
year.
yep.
And world champion in the time trial. Yeah, dude. I mean, how do you? It's hard to mock the guy when
we
he's backing it up.
We can still mock him.
We'll find a way.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
good.
Is our little Evan Pohl growing up finally?
Maybe he's
Not,
growing up
not
a little
so much of a jackass anymore, just a little less jackassery.
So the postal worker was getting a whole bunch of heat for taking out the world champion or the Olympic champion, right?
Not his fault.
And it really wasn't. He just probably, it was a woman. And so Remco made a Instagram post saying, hey, I fractured my shoulder blade and I had a training accident. I'm very grateful, blah, blah, blah. And he said, a special mention to my wife or family and for standing in me. And then he also said, I also want to express my support to the woman who was involved in the accident. So he's trying to kind of take the heat off of her because...
well, not for nothing. If it's going to be anybody's fault, it's kind of his.
Yeah, was he riding too close? Was he riding too
You're
fast?
not supposed to open your door without looking in the mirror.
True, but how fast do you think he was going?
Enough to break his freaking top tube.
Well,
I mean, yeah.
was it? I don't know. Was it flat?
At the end of the
If it was
day,
flat,
you
he's
as
probably
the
going
cyclist, you need to be
gotta be careful.
so aware of that. And I tell this to people all the time.
Yeah.
If there's cars and they're parked,
Yep.
you have to assume that every single time you go
Yes.
by that car, that door is going to open.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I
just have-
always
that's how you have to
assume.
roll.
I'm assuming that door is going to
Yeah.
open, and I'm giving myself even more space because someone's going to step out too.
Yeah.
It's like,
Okay, but these are little, narrow European roads. Yep. He's out in rural area in these. He was 15 minutes from town. He was 15 miles outside of Brussels, so he wasn't like
take the lane.
Right, I know.
Take the lane.
I mean, you got to think he probably even had a follow car with him. Maybe not because the woman helped, like took care of him, and she recognized him immediately.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, this is Remco.
I think she said Big Six.
Big Six down.
Wait, this is Remco. He's one of the Big Six.
No, if this is like what was it, the Opioma thing, the sign from the Tour de France,
Right.
that's one thing. That's 100% on the spectator. The cyclist, not their fault at all. Even though there's people all over the place, you get the whole road, they get the F out of the way. In that situation, again, you have to treat every single car door like it's going to open into you.
And I guarantee you, all four of us are cyclists and we were out on the road. And I guarantee you, when we park, we don't even look in the mirror when we open that door so many times. I'm sure I've made that mistake. Hopefully, I'm not doing that into a bike lane.
I almost never park on the road where there's bikes that are going to be going by, but I know that's a good question. I don't know. Would I look? I'd probably take a little bit more of a look than the average person, but would I look enough to see if Evan
Poole is going 30 miles an hour?
Yeah, I mean, if he's rolling by at 25, 30 miles an hour and you glance in your mirror, he could be not there 1 second and there the next.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And you're grabbing the mail to put in the mailbox and open the door, and you're not.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of another question too. If they're on that side of the road, the door and everything usually happens on the side of the car where the mail's at. So
Right, not on the outside.
It's different in Europe. I think they actually get out of the vehicles to deliver the mail because most mail
one of those
boxes are in
clusters.
people's front doors. You don't usually have a mailbox by the side of the road. So you get out of the mail van.
No, I come from a family of postal workers. So
deliver the mail.
My grandfather and my mom were both postal carriers, and the door it was like a European car. Everything was on the right side of the car. So I'd imagine that everything in their cars can be on the left side because it's going to be a lot faster for them to exit the car and go straight to the house as opposed to getting out, walking through traffic, walking around the front of the car and then going to the house. They're going to optimize that so they keep the person in safe.
It's hard to speculate. You know, most in urban areas, most mail is delivered on foot or by bike. So it's just she was out in the countryside. It's not the same setup at all. It's like delivering the papers, right? The newspapers. When I had a paper route when I was a kid, you actually had to go to every door and push the paper through the newspaper through the front door of the house. You can't just chuck it on the
Uphill,
front yard
in the snow.
Exactly. For threepence an hour.
For threepence?
Now we're talking.
That's 3 pennies.
Okay.
This has been Thruppets Talk.
I got your threepence right here.
Where
I'll
were
take
we?
your threepence and raise
What
you
were
a
we talking
shilling.
about? Is there any other news?
No. Well, there was the second UCI cyclocross race happened in Dublin. So they went across the pond a little bit to do a cyclocross race. No Vanderpool, no Wout, no Pidcock. None of those guys are in there yet.
Yeah, but it was a great race. The men's races.
The men's race was very good. There was like 7 guys, like all like battling off the front.
Does Pidcock's contract start next year?
Yes, January 1st.
So he won't race until So that makes sense.
Yeah. So plus the big time for cyclocross is Christmas period.
Yeah, that's right. They
Between
have like
Christmas and New
they
Year's.
have like 10 races or something.
10 races in 12 days.
In one day.
In a day.
Were there any official or unofficial, would be even better, statements made from Ineos?
I don't know.
Feels like it's been pretty quiet. That popped. I saw it yesterday, and as a matter of fact, I took a screenshot and sent it to you guys.
Yeah.
You kind of saw the writing on the wall. You thought he was going to stay there for a minute, but I'm curious, like, what's their take on this?
A couple weeks ago, there was an event in England somewhere where they had like cycling people on stage. It's some kind of cycling event in England. I don't know what it is, but they had Pidcock on stage, and they asked Pidcock, "Hey, are you? It looks like that you're going to stay with Ineos. Has that relationship been repaired, and are you going to be good with them going forward?" And there were Ineos people in the audience, and Pidcock, his answer was, "I'm not going to lie, no."
Whoa!
So this was 2 weeks before this actually came out. So he manned up and just said,
a little chirpy.
Yeah, he's like, "No, I can't go beyond. I can't tell you anything more than that." But
wow,
basically, no, the relationship is fractured and it's over. So we kind of knew it was coming.
Yeah.
But it just hadn't. They couldn't do anything official because it's not over till the end of December. I don't know why they finally decided it was okay to announce, but it was announced just yesterday. Was it yesterday? The day before. Yeah. So kind of close.
I always thought Pidcock had a kind of peculiar position within Ineos anyway. Like he wasn't really. He was on their Grand Tour squad, but you couldn't really say he was a domestique, and he wasn't really a leader.
Right.
He's the front guy for some of the classic races, the one-day races that Ineos entered, but it was the regular Ineos leaders and their backup riders plus Pidcock. I don't quite know where he fitted in.
He would go win
with
some
all of that.
stages, but he wouldn't necessarily be a domestique like helper.
Mm-hmm. They did send him in as the GC for the tour. Was it 2 or 3 years ago? And he pretty much folded. No, but 4 or 5 days into it.
4 or 5 days. Then he lost a bunch of time, and that's why he was able to win the Alpe d'Huez stage because he had lost enough time that they let him kind of go, and then he got too far away, and they couldn't pull him back.
Yeah. Well,
anyway, good luck to him.
Yeah.
It's
going to be tricky on that team.
It will definitely raise the level of that team and the exposure for that team having him on it, and that's what they're trying to do. And he's getting paid now, so maybe he can do all the races he wants to do.
All right, gonna wonder if they've got deep pockets and they're gonna bring in some support.
They do have the owner of that team has some deep pockets.
All right,
so but there's not that many other. Most people's rosters are set at this point. They're not going to be able to pull in a lot of good support for him at this point. So
true. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay, that's a lot of Pidcock talk.
Wow. I don't even know. Pidcock talk.
Pidcock talk. All right.
What else? Anything else?
Okay, so the cyclocross race in Dublin. It looked like, little Ellie Easterbit, I should not say it that way, but he's a little guy.
He will stomp on your bike.
So he won the first race, and so he was actually doing quite well. His teammate, Michael Van Taurenhout, they've been kind of 1-2ing people at these races. And then Van Taurenhout hit a stake and snapped the boa off his shoe.
Oh.
And so he had to stop in the pit and actually change his shoe. And you lose like 10 seconds doing that.
Yeah.
So this was like lap 3 of 8.
Bike change is easy compared.
Bike change is easy. You don't lose momentum with bike change, but stopping, pulling off your shoe, putting on another one, it's kind of a different ballgame. But still, Van Taurenhout was able to catch back up with the lead like 4 guys and just made the right move at the right time, and he won. So Van Taurenhout won. Toon Ertz was second. The Spanish guy, Ortiz, Orts.
Felipe Orts.
Yeah, Felipe Orts. He was third, and Elisabeth ended up fourth. So it was an exciting race to watch. Interestingly enough, in the women's race, Fem Van Empel, who is the reigning world champion, has not lost a UCI cyclocross race in over a year, like 14 months. And she got beat by Lucinda Brand.
Wow.
So Fem Van Empel did flat and was able to change her bike pretty quickly, but Lucinda Brand was just like motivated and she couldn't pull her back. So Lucinda Brand ended up winning that race, Fem Van Empel second. So pretty interesting. Other than that, that's it. That's all I got.
One more quick question for you, Champ. We've got just under a week before we start the U.S. National Cyclocross Championships.
Yes.
You got any info on that? Any picks? Anybody we should be keeping an eye on? Do we know anybody heading out that way?
It's a good question. I think we have a teammate or two going out there. I think Whitney.
This
is like her third year.
Yeah, or fourth or something.
Maybe even more than that. Is her brother old enough to go this year?
I don't believe so. He's 10.
I think isn't that right? Well, I think he's race age 11.
Oh,
so he might be. Maybe I don't know.
I have no information on that. In the pro field, in the elite fields, Andrew Strohmeyer has been winning a lot of the American records. He was at that Dublin race and took 17th in the UCI, which is actually pretty good. Kerry Werner has been racing really well. So it should be interesting to see what happens at Nationals. You've got Eric Brunner, Kerry Werner, Curtis White, Andrew Strohmeyer, Scott Funston. Those are like the 5 big names that I think will battle for the championship.
Anybody from our neck of the woods, Pacific Northwest?
I don't think so.
No. Bossier not going?
Who?
Paul?
Oh, I have no idea. He might be. Paul Boursier, he might be going.
Gotcha. There's a 10 and under non-championship race that's 20 minutes long, and then there is a junior men's and women's 11, 12-year-olds. So I think Carter could be old enough now. I think he is race age 11
maybe
for cyclocross, yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah. We'll find out next week.
Hayden's, let us know. Yeah. I believe it's next week, like Wednesday through Sunday, I think is the race. It's 12th, in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yep, the 12th through the 15th in Louisville. The
last national champions that were held in Louisville was an absolute mud fest where there was, per lap, there was 2.5 minutes of riding per lap, and the rest of it was running. Ouch. It was so muddy. So hopefully it's not quite that muddy, and it's more of a bike race than a cross-country running race like idiots. So
silly cross-country runners.
Silly cross-country runners.
All right, what's next?
That's it. That's all I got.
Champ out.
Champ out.
Thank you, Champ Bailey. We really appreciate that.
Speaking of news.
Before we get to that, one more quick thing here. Well, Fanbit.
Oh, fan.
We still don't have a freaking name for that.
Fanbit?
Fred Fanbit.
Fandango.
Remember we used to do the lead, not the lead out, that's the news bit, the hot lap.
We used to do the listener hot lap.
So maybe, I think we might need to do a play off of that.
All right.
Anyway, we did get one that came through, so I wanted to bring it up real quick.
Let's hear it.
So this listener had a question for us, and I'm going to turn this down a little bit because I can't even hear myself think right now. They want us to do a little bit of a survey and put something out there. I'm thinking maybe we can put up a little poll like on the Facebooks or something like that. They want to know which one of these we could do, and it's going to be SRAM versus Shimano. All right, that's a good one.
SRAM versus Shimano.
I mean, I've got a definite favorite there.
SRAM. I like SRAM.
Matt's going to say Shimano.
Campy,
of course.
Campy.
Garmin versus Wahoo, which will be a good segue into what we're going to talk about here in just a second. Okay. And then the last one, which is really super interesting, Lance versus an AI co-host.
No. Yes.
An AI
please,
co-host.
Replace me with an AI co-host. That's exactly what you
It'd be hard to beat.
Is a lot smarter than me. Would probably know the actual results of races instead of making things up.
So, anyway, we appreciate that, and I'm gonna figure out a place to post that up where everybody can kind of go vote on that, and maybe we'll put up all of them. Maybe we'll do one a week for a little bit. But we do.
Speaking of Garmin versus Wahoo,
one quick second, we do want to hear from people. Matt is just chomping at the bit.
There's more people.
Stop your transition.
Wait, there's more people to hear from.
There are.
Let's hear it.
Well, there's not more people, but we want more people here.
Matt
From that's why
recognizes a good
telling the story.
segue when he hears one.
If you got questions, you got feedback, you got funny things to say, you want us to talk about anything, you want to be on the pod, any of that stuff, there's a little button there on your player likely now that says
buttons.
text. Exactly. Text the show.
It
Take
says
advantage
send
of it.
us a text.
Send us a text. Yeah.
It's a hot link. You hit it and you get to text us.
I've looked at it on a couple different platforms. It's in there in all of them, and it just kind of pipes through. And again, we don't get your full phone number. We get your last 4 digits, and we won't know who you are unless you indicate who it is. But we'd love to hear from you. So do it. Matt, what is it that you were just beating the doors down with? What do you got going on here? What is that brown box you got over
December
there?
3rd, Wahoo announced their latest and greatest cycling computer,
They
which
sure
we've
did.
actually talked about on the podcast.
Yep.
But now it's in hand.
We've got the box here in hand.
Jake has the box in studio, if you will. And we can open it up on air and just pass it around.
Yeah, open that up and see what's in there real quick. Is that a Wahoo Ace or is that my old BlackBerry? I can't
This
tell.
is way bigger than your old BlackBerry.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, that's an Ace.
This
Yeah,
is
it's
the
cool.
Wahoo Ace. And well, let's pass it around so people can kind of give their impressions. Large and in charge. Large Marge in charge.
This is a very big computer. It looks like Wahoo has made it to compete with the Garmin 1050.
Yeah.
It's a hair bigger than the 1050 too.
There's a lot of people that came out and said it's the biggest computer on the market. I think there's one little obscure one that's a tiny bit bigger. So I don't know. They didn't get that.
It's big and it's heavy. I mean,
it's
gotta
over
be a
200.
pound.
It's over 200 grams. I think it's like 210 grams. I can pull up the specs.
206 grams or 204 grams.
Something like that. It's over 200 grams, which is...
See, that's not going to work for me.
Well, you know what? When we first saw it...
With my now 8% body fat, it's just... It's gotta.
When we first saw it, Lance made a really good comment, and I tend to agree with him. That is a fantastic computer for just training and going out and doing some touring around. Just basically anything that's not racing. That's going to be a fantastic computer if you're worried about weight. What do you think? I mean, you've got this
because then you take it off your bike and suddenly you're going uphill 2 miles an hour faster. That's worth it right there.
Yeah, a little overload principle there for you for your training.
No, for sure. I'm just kidding you. But yeah, in a race, I wouldn't want to have it. But for training, it would be great for me because my poor eyesight, I could see it better.
Yeah.
And also, I hear it's got
lost out there all the time.
Right. Yeah. And apparently, it's got a speaker on it as well. So it'll actually tell you what it's. Yeah.
Right there is the speaker.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyway.
That's good. I can't afford it, but hey.
They're about $600, which is not. That's better than expected. I think that the Garmin 1050s are more than that.
Yeah. $100 more, basically.
Yeah, $100 more.
There's also a solar edition of the 1040 that's $150 more. So these are pricey computers. There's no doubt about that.
A couple of great features that this have. So the maps are bigger. You can pinch in and out of the maps
because it has a touchscreen.
It has a touchscreen.
First Wahoo device with a touchscreen.
First Wahoo with a touchscreen. It does have a bell,
bike bell,
bike bell like the 1050 also has. You double tap the screen and the little speaker. Bing, bing. Yeah.
I would imagine it's got a pretty sizable battery in it, right? Is it?
Yeah.
They're saying, okay, so there's the backstory on that is like 30 hours. However, there's that's with a screen timeout that's like only lighting it up for like 5 seconds and then it times out.
Part of their thought process though is it's supposed to use the ambient sunlight to help brighten up the screen when it's in the sun. At least that's what I've seen and read and heard in some of the videos that I've reviewed. But it still sounds like in a lot of situations you're not going to want that. You're going to want the screen on full brightness. But there is some sort of special display that it's supposed to like use the light from the sun to help illuminate the actual screen. I'll pull up the exact specifics on that, but I thought that was kind of interesting, and that's how they're coming up with that 30 hours. I think Matt alluded to the fact that it's much less if you don't do that. I think it's more in the ballpark of what, like 14 or 15 hours? Yeah. Which is still pretty good. But
if you keep it on like auto brightness where it brightens, compared to the sun, it's like 12 to 15 hours or something like that, which should be plenty for almost anything you do other than multi-day.
It's better than the Hammerhead Crew, or similar to the Hammerhead Crew 3, but remember the Hammerhead Crew 2, which we all kind of were like, yeah, this is, you do a 100-miler and you're like, oh, we're pushing to the limit here. So yeah, this is going to get you through, those century rides for sure.
Interesting about the navigation is you can now have it set to give you audible directions.
I need that.
Yes, like left turn ahead.
Yeah, there was another asterisk on that though, and I think DC Rainmaker Matt will probably attest to this too because you probably watched the video. It said something that it kind of rang true with me. The voice that they used with that and the octave or whatever tone that's at, and when you're riding in the wind, when you mesh the two things up, it almost like it doesn't cancel out the voice, but it makes it really hard to hear. So this thing came out undercooked, not fully baked, and it's got all of the hardware that it needs. It's got the bones, the foundation, but there's some iterations that are going to need to come.
No
through
Strava
this.
segments, for example.
No Strava live
that
segments.
would be hard for you guys.
Yeah,
I think. I think I found it very odd that like the Roam and the Bolt are so well baked, and this one not being as much. And then Ray did mention, and then I think someone else also, but like they're basically saying like, yeah, it was a complete rewrite. So doing that means it's not going to be as polished when you have to rewrite the entire code base for a new product.
If you go to Wahoo's website, it actually says coming soon for the Strava segments and points of interest, as well as the custom alerts. So that stuff's all going to come down the pipeline. So it's going to be like little like mini Christmases with this device. If you decide that you want to pick it up where like they're going to push out a firmware update, hopefully it's not going to be like big chunks of time in between, but you're like, woohoo, it's all of a sudden got this new feature on there that's great that it should have had when it first came out. But this computer
doesn't it have like a wind sensor on it?
It
does, yeah.
Well?
Yeah, so this section right here in front actually is it measures the wind speed coming into the front of the computer. So and it should show you what your ground speed is compared to the wind speed. So they don't have it set up real intuitively yet, but you can tell if your ground speed is going faster than the wind speed that you are.
Right.
You got a tailwind. And if it's the other way, you're pushing more
draft
watts.
or tailwind or whatever.
And you can see it change as you pull in and out of a draft or not.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting feature that they don't quite have all figured out yet either.
Yeah.
Comes with a nice aluminum upfront mount, which is basically the only way that you would want to use this, I think.
Again, beefy, heavy. Yeah.
It's aluminum, not plastic, because this thing is heavy. And so they wanted to include something that would work.
Well, it's so big that a lot of the out front mounts that are, native to bikes or that the secondary market has made, it won't fit on there. It's just too big. There are like certain, like for instance, your bike, your BMC Team machine has this, it kind of looks like a popsicle stick, but you can loosen the bolts and it'll telescope in and out based on what size computer you have. I'm pretty sure if you push it all the way out, yours is going to fit, if you wanted to put that on, it would fit just fine. Now, if you've got something that's a static one that's a little bit closer and it just fits like a 540 or a Element bolt, no way, it's not going to work.
It's not going to fit on there.
And then it gets to the point where it's like a lot of people have the Aero handlebars too. So, having this like the
mount
circular mount
doesn't work on Aero handlebars.
Might be an issue.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's a lot of people rushing right now to develop something that they can bring to market first so that they can sell a bunch of them for all of these different issues, whether it be the out front mount that needs a telescope a little bit further out or something that's going to be shaped to more of the popular Aero bars. They've got to be getting on top of that.
Yeah,
I'm definitely very interested in this. Like I said, this would be something I would really like to train with, just because you can see things better on the map. There's a lot more real estate. It's heavier for sure, but man, they revamped the app too that's associated with
mobile
this.
app.
Well, it's not even the app that you use for your Element anymore. That's going to be going away. They're just going to that one standard Wahoo app, the one that you use to set up like your kicker bike and the fan and all the peripherals that you can connect to it. That's where everything's going to live now, and they're going to probably just do away with that Bolt app and bring everything over eventually. And it's supposed to have a little bit more depth, a little bit more.
I love that
connectivity.
Too. Yeah,
less apps on your phone is kind of nice as well. Just put it all in one place.
Anyway, I'm interested, but
so you're gonna take it for a ride at some point and see what you think.
I'm gonna use this for the next week or so, and
try some navigating stuff.
Yes, I'm gonna try some navigating stuff.
Yeah, because you have the Bolt. So
I have the tiny one, the very small Bolt. So to see how this compares should be interesting for sure.
A lot of women say it's more like how you use it, not necessarily the size. Okay, that's what I've heard.
It may be small, but it's as thick as a soup can.
Yeah, and that thing is thick. It's not only the size of a cell phone, but it's wide and thick.
3.8 inches, baby.
3.8 inches.
It's yeah, you're gonna feel that one.
So
it's a solid piece of equipment.
That was originally supposed to come out in late October. I think that they've been obviously working on this for a bit of time, and the thought process was come out late October, big splash right before the holidays. Did we bite off more than we could chew? Is there way too much still to do? Is this enough to put it out now just so we can sell a few of these for the holidays and maybe have all the firmware done by springtime? Is that kind of what your guys' thoughts are on this?
Yeah, it's an odd. So December 3rd. So all these companies try and put stuff out in the fall so that you get the splash of a new product, people buy it, and then holiday shopping, people purchase it. And so like the prime time to put out tech, right? Like they always call it like Tech Timber and Techtober, you know, it's just like the running joke that there's all this new tech in the fall. So that's the time to put stuff out, and you put it out December 3rd. Yeah, it's pretty late for the holiday side of things. And if you're North American side of stuff, like you're just less people doing outdoor stuff. Like less people are going and doing the outdoor. This is not the time where people are buying cycling computers, at least on this side of the world. So I think probably, you know, spring would have been a smart time frame, or even like early summer where it's like, hey, everyone's outdoors, they're doing stuff, they want their new cycling computer. They could have waited and baked the software a little bit, fixed it up, finalized it, and then released it.
Do you think it's going to harm the clout of this computer? I mean, if it had come out fully ready and everything was optimized and done and you know, it's good to go, do you think that they would have sold more if they just waited until the spring versus like putting it out now with being 80% done?
The reason I think so is because there's a lot of reviewers that post stuff and it's like, it's great, it's big, you know, whatever. But there's a lot of negative reviews of this thing. I would say at best it's mixed reviews. And so if you're shopping, you're constantly seeing these reviews that have been out for a month or two and they've got all these views. So they float up to the top of the search algorithm and they're all kind of negative. Like, if you're buying something for $600, you're probably going to read reviews about it. And if they're negative, you're probably going to shy away from it. So,
but that's just a firmware update to fix.
Yes, correct.
But that's going to be 2 months down the road, 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road.
But the question is then, like, are people really going to double back and review this a second time after 3 months? Some people will, but most of the press period is going to be over and they're going to be on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think this kind of happened with the Koros Dura cycling computer.
Also released unbaked, not finished.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very unbaked and missing a lot of stuff. Very cool computer, doing a lot of things very uniquely, just like especially when it comes to battery life and stuff like that. I'm impressed with this thing, but man.
Okay, so that was 6 months ago it was released, and I have not heard whether that firmware has been updated enough where it's more usable than it was.
They've slowly been progressing, but it's like they had such a bad launch with that computer. It was like, well, now if you bought one, we gotta send you a new one because it's just there's like hardware issues and software issues. But the things that it does are really unique and really cool. You know, I don't know if they'll ever overcome the bad early press. And I think probably it should be a lesson for anyone that's in product launches. It's part of PR teams. It's like, get stuff out that's fully baked so that you get that bump, that good PR bump. And then, because that stuff is the stuff that sits at the top of the search engines. And it's really hard to get other stuff above that after 3-4 months after it's been out there for a while. Anyway.
Yeah. All that said, I think that what they could have done was actually done a big push or a PR push on their behalf, as opposed to putting this in the hands of people and then throwing some specs up on the website and then launching and pushing out these computers, which by all intents and purposes, they're great. But if they were to come out and say something, hey, here's what we did and this is why we did it. It's not fully ready yet. And it's indicated on the website. It says coming soon and here's why. And here's what you can anticipate. And this is what this thing has the capacity to do. Get people excited about what it's going to be able to do. when you think that's going to come out, and just kind of build up a little bit of like, hey, get on this now, because it's going to scratch a lot of itches for you. And I don't know, maybe be a part of like some beta development or some feedback, or just giving people the ability to have a voice like, hey, it's got the capacity to do so many great things. It can do just about anything. Let us know what you want it to do, and we'll start baking that in there.
Yeah, my guess is like you said, it was going to come out a lot earlier. And then when you start talking about doing a complete rewrite, you just realize, oh yeah, and it's missing this, and it's missing this, and it's missing Strava segments, and it's missing that. It's like, oh, this just takes developers so much time to do all these different things and make sure it doesn't break. I don't know. Tough launch.
Would you buy one?
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, so the weight of it doesn't bother me. The size of it doesn't bother me that much. I do like computers that I don't have to do use a special attachment piece to put on the computer, to put on the bike or whatever, because I have one that's kind of built into the BMC. So I prefer to use that one if I can. Using a separate one is a little bit annoying, but I could get over that. I don't know what it brings to the table. The wind gauge thing, the battery life isn't that great. Like the wind gauge thing is...
The screen looks pretty fantastic, but...
Like compared to the Roam, like you're pretty happy with the Roam. Like the Roam is one of my favorite computers.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we like it is that it doesn't have a touchscreen. You have these great buttons and they work and they're functional, and you don't have to deal with the, rain changing your settings on the touchscreen. Yeah. Wahoo makes some good computers. This one, I think the jury's still out.
True. I mean, don't knock it till you tried it.
Right.
That's my approach. That's what I'm going to take. And
that's smart.
The other thing will be the proof's in the pudding. Throw the little.
Lance, after you've written it, I wouldn't mind borrowing it for like a.
Yeah, we'll
a little
pass
ride.
it around the table.
No.
Okay. We'll see. Like maybe Lance will be so attached to it that he'll be like, over my dead body.
Maybe.
You're gonna have to run me over and take this computer off of my bike.
Yeah.
This is Jake's computer. It's not mine.
Yeah.
So he can do whatever that he wants to.
Yeah.
He just can't ride for a bit, so I'm gonna test it out.
My proxies.
My proxy.
You got a lot of proxy riders.
You know what? Here, use that little text feature. Did you buy one of these? Let us know. What do you think about it? And if you've read everything or you want to know anything about it, let us know. Ask us questions, and we'll just kind of give you some slow updates on this. I mean, I really do like Wahoo a lot. I think they're a fantastic company. They put out some great stuff. I'm hoping that this thing's great. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see.
I prefer Wahoo over Garmin. I have come to, as far as bike computers go, but that's completely personal choice. So that's why I'm very interested in this.
But I also think that's because you've experienced the Bolt and the Roam, and they've been solid.
They have been solid.
And this, we'll see.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Good times. Anything else on this guy?
No.
Yeah.
Moving along.
Hey, all things FTP. I stumbled across this really good blog post on the interwebs. It was called All Things FTP. Have you guys seen that? Have you guys heard about that?
Where can we find it?
I was on some
website.
Dialid
Dialysis.
Performance coaching. Performance coaching. That's you,
that's
Ian.
me.
You wrote a blog about all things FTP.
Yeah.
What's that about?
It's about all things FTP.
FTP, is that forget this post?
Yeah, functional threshold power.
Funky taco party?
Like I was saying earlier, it took me hours to write, months to get around to writing, and it's gone completely viral since it's been up. I think there's 2 or 3 likes now on Facebook.
Foul tasting popcorn? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
F this place?
Something like that.
Oh, so in all seriousness, talk to us about this. It's that time of year. Everybody's kind of got that on their mind a little bit because there's a lot of people that are starting to transition back into a training program. They're, maybe they're on the trainer and they're seeing all these, power numbers and they're like thinking about the springtime. And if you're going to put in the work, now's the time of the year that you do that. So then spring rolls around, you're all that in a bag of chips.
I mean, it's relatively recent phenomena, right? That's pretty much all cyclists now. If you're competitive or if you're strongly motivated to train, then you bought a power meter because they're reasonably priced now and everybody has one. So, and this metric, this functional threshold power of FTP, I felt that it was little understood, much used. It was some people, it's kind of like the cyclists. how much can you bench? You know, it's like
Yeah.
a badge of honor or
a chest
or
pounding thing, a little
a thing of
machismo.
shame, you know. Right. But what does it mean exactly? And is it even relevant to you and your particular cycling mode? Like,
Yeah.
if you're a road racer or a mountain biker,
Well, here's the
or,
thing,
or
too.
a recreational cyclist, is it
That's
really
what I was
that
gonna
important?
say.
So-
It kind of is, because I mean, we deal with a lot of people, a big cross section of people that will come into the lab. That, you know, there's a big chunk of them that are racer types, because that's kind of the vein we run in. But there's also just as many people that are just out recreational riding and like going on the fun little weekend rides with their friends, or maybe doing like a charity ride or something along those events. It doesn't matter who you are. Everybody wants to be able to ride just a little bit better. Nobody wants to hold up a group. Everybody wants to be able to enjoy their ride. So whether you're trying to be at the pointy end of a bike race and trying to be able to like be as competitive as you possibly can, or just being able to go out and finish a 2-hour ride, you want to be able to do that as best as you possibly can. You don't necessarily have to take a racer's mentality to that, but if you understand how you can use FTP to help you find more enjoyment in cycling, it's relevant to everybody. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack what you were saying, but
No, I agree. And this is one of the points I make is it relevant to you? And it depends. Yes, for all the things you just mentioned, in that it's a quantifiable, objective measurement of your fitness level at that sort of range of power, your endurance fitness level. So the sort of gold standard of saying whether you're an athlete who's in great shape or you've got a way to develop is to look at your threshold power versus your absolute maximum capacity to process oxygen. So
Sure.
your VO2 max. And elite athletes can get within sort of 85 to 90% of that absolute maximum oxygen uptake, their VO2 max, and maintain that, you know, for 50 minutes, an hour or longer. And so your percentage of FTP as in relation to your VO2 max is an important and measurable marker to use. However, if you have a strong FTP, will that make you faster in your particular race? And my argument is yes
Maybe.
and no. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, for somebody like Matt, you know, people in the triathlon community where it's important to put out a steady, long effort, go as hard as you can for a prolonged period. Absolutely. If your gig is time trialing, you want to get faster at a 40-kilometer time trial, absolutely. FTP, you will attempt to do exactly your FTP for the entire duration of the race. If you're a track racer, a mountain biker or a road racer or a crit racer, all of those things have got much bigger variability, in intensity variability. And so it's not everything. Okay, so just as important is your ability to go with the surges, right? To be able to put out that maximum effort for 3, 4, 5 minutes, perhaps have a stronger sprint or have a bigger engine when it comes to just sitting there in the pack for 2 to 3 hours at a time. So all of those things may be more important to the particular event you're
for sure.
towards.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into what you just talked about. I mean, there's plenty of people that have an FTP that's far less than mine, and their watts per kilogram could actually be on par with me. But, you know, it just depends on a myriad of things. Like, I mean, they could be more aerodynamic on the bike. They could have a little bit better racecraft. They could have a better setup. Like, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that play into this whole equation that you're talking about. But on the whole, I mean, when you want to take a look at like what the biggest factor is, if your FTP is 365 and my FTP is, I don't know, 250, and we're going to go do a race together, even if it's in a group and we can use group dynamics, I'm still not going to be able to hang likely. And if you want to be the protagonist and you want to be aggressive and you want to get rid of me, it's a whole hell of a lot easier if my FTP is down low as it is. that's us being equal weight, equal bite, equal
quite
everything.
possibly. But I look at my own experience with racing, road races, and I don't have a particularly high FTP, right? And we can talk about FTP being as an absolute value versus a relative value relative to your weight. So in other words, watts per kilogram. Again, that depends on the course, on the terrain, on the event itself. And I've still managed to be reasonably successful in races by sitting in, executing a smart race, being there at the end, being able to put out that 400, 500, 600 watts for the final minute, the final lap of a crit, before the sprint starts. It's all of those things I can do with a relatively low FTP. Now, using it as a metric, as a way to measure your fitness is has relevance, right? Because as you bring up your FTP, if you're doing it in a methodical, structured way, the good news is that you are most likely bringing up your 5-minute effort power, and your 4-hour power. What you can do aerobically. So I thought it was important to explain exactly what FTP is and the physiology that underlies it as well. And if people had more of an understanding of that, maybe they could make a judgment for themselves whether it's something they need to pursue
so
or not.
Going back to the notion of like everybody needs to use their FTP no matter what they're doing, I mean, that was a little far-fetched to say that, but to have a good solid understanding of it and understand how to test it, understand what it means, understand how to use that number to develop zones so that you know how to train, so that you know how to use a power meter, and so you know how to like manage your efforts and give yourself expectations of like how this is going to roll out, and then just slowly layer things up over the course of time with a little bit of an overload principle. If you take all of that and put that together and you're not a racer type, it's going to be very fruitful for you. It's going to be very it's going to be a lot of fun too. I mean, you get to dig into the metrics and you get to kind of nerd out on the sport that you love, but you can use that on so many different levels just to make yourself an all-around better cyclist and not ever have to pin on a number to go race.
Yeah.
You're going to learn stuff, and you could even cross that over into like, the watts that you're putting out and understanding how that meshes up with the nutrition that you're taking on, the hydration that you're putting in so that you can last a little bit longer because you want to go do that, reach the beach ride that's going to take you 5 hours, whatever. You want to go do STP over 2 days and you got to do back-to-back centuries. Knowing how to manage all of that and understanding what your zones are, how you're using your power, how to fuel yourself, all of that stuff is going to pay big dividends. And you're not ever pinning on a number. You're not racing. You're not the Joe Racer type. You don't care about KOMs and winning bike races. You just want to go out and enjoy the sport. And having that information is going to serve you so well.
I would say that if you're a cyclist who is interested in making performance gains outside of competition, right? So you're just you're a recreational cyclist who wants to be able to measure how fit they're getting, then with today's power meters, you can get it's a good metric. It's kind of the gold standard of how much power. So FTP basically, really quickly, is what is the maximum power you can sustain for 1 hour?
A functional threshold power for an hour.
Now, so the functional part of it, though, means that it's an estimate. It's something you're obtaining through field testing rather than in a lab, right? So the actual physiological threshold is related to FTP, but most people don't get that tested in a lab. So functionally, you can say, well, this threshold actually happens right around 1 hour of riding at your maximum pace. Although there's various ways to measure it, various protocols in use. Some are better than others. It has been shown that somebody will get an FTP value from doing a test, whether it's a traditional 20-minute test or a ramp type test where you incrementally push up the resistance.
Sure.
You get this power number and you go, great, I've got an FTP of 250 watts. Can you actually do 250 watts for an entire hour? Probably not. Most people they can actually maintain their FTP for somewhere between 35 to 40 minutes. And the reason is, we can talk about the underlying physiology, but it's not, FTP is not like an on-off switch. It's not like you can ride all day at a certain pace and then above that threshold, you just fall off a cliff. You can't do any more. Riding at 95% of your FTP is still a very uncomfortable thing to do, right? You've got acid building up in your blood, and that's the limiting factor. You just can't deal with that level of discomfort. So yeah, it's not like an on-off switch.
Okay, so people are probably asking, like, what's a good FTP? And how? And once I know what my FTP is, how can I improve that? So let's speak to those two things real quick, based on what you've written in your little novella here.
What FTP? Like, if someone wants to be able to talk to us, we don't talk to anyone unless their FTP is over 300, right? It's like a rule of thumb.
Yeah, you don't give anybody the time of day that's
no.
under. Yeah, no. That's a good question.
Well, the pros are going to be well into the 400s, like probably 450 to 480.
Depends on their size, right?
Yeah.
Depends on their size. Some of the bigger guys like Brendan Johnson, I mean, theirs is like 465 or something.
Yeah.
But smaller guys like Vingago or Tade, they may be 360, but they only weigh 130 pounds.
I think Tade's is over 400.
It's probably and he's under.
He was talking about going on a 4 or 5 hour zone 2 ride at like 315.
Yeah, that's true.
That's crazy. That's just bonkers. But those are non-human reptilian people that, do crazy things on bikes. Your Pro Peloton and all those folks. Your elite Cat 1, 2 peoples are probably going to be in that, like, right around that 400 threshold.
Yeah, like 350 to 400.
And again, it just depends on their size.
To be competitive as an amateur and as, say, like a Cat 3, you really want to be competitive. You try to get to around 4 watts per kilo.
That was my next thing was going to be, it's like you have to take that relationship.
That's always
with watts
been
per
my
kilo.
goal, to try and get to 4 watts per kilo. So I have done that. I'm not there now. I was there last season, mostly through losing a few pounds, right? Because that affects your relative FTP just as much as gaining extra power. So,
okay, I'm just crunching some numbers. What's the best watts per kilogram that you've ever sustained, Mr. Hepler, over there?
Sustained,
or not sustained? But just say that once you determine what your FTP was, and then you mesh that over your weight and converted everything to kilograms and whatnot. I mean,
in race situations where I'm fit, like in the last 2 years where I've done races that have been more than 2 or 3 hours, and I've been fit and I have like performed well, I'm barely doing 4.3 watts per kilogram.
Okay.
For like a 30-minute stretch.
Gotcha.
And that is going balls out.
Would you say then that you were riding above your FTP?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
My FTP has been roughly 310 for this last year.
Okay.
But I weigh 180 pounds. So my watts per kilogram is not at 4.
Yeah. Well, it'll change by the time we get to start a season. You'll start to bring the FTP up maybe just a skosh, and your body weight will come down just a skosh. And
for a masters athlete to be around 4 watts per kilogram, you're going to be competitive.
Yeah. Matt, I don't know if you remember what your weights were, what your FTP numbers were, but
I was just trying to figure it out.
Your Arizona time, your Arizona triathlon that you did was probably. Would you say that was the most fit that you've been in triathlon?
Yeah.
Triathlon.
So I was right close to 300 like FTP, and my weight was less than I am now, significantly. Just 40 pounds, 30 pounds. Anyway, but yeah, so I think it was close to 4 or over.
Okay.
Wow.
And then, Ian, you're probably right on that 4 mark too. So
I was, and I'm not now. So that brings up another point. So it's going to vary throughout the year.
For sure. It's amazing how much weight plays into a role.
And,
right?
and I would say in the peak of race season, when I'm at my leanest, I'm just pushing up against 4 watts per kilos. But again, that depends on the time of year, your level of fitness, and also whether you're actually indoors on your trainer versus out doors on the road. So
your numbers are better outdoors.
Yeah,
100%.
So
probably a good
absolutely.
10%.
I have
10, 15, 20% in some cases.
at least I have about a 30-watt difference between on the trainer.
Yeah, that
So
sounds right.
this is important though, because most people operate with an inflated sense of their FTP, right? And that may have come about through doing a legitimate test, but out on the road.
Yep. This is a big
agree.
thing that needs to be talked about. Go ahead and finish what you're going to say, because I think you're going to say exactly what all of us want to say.
In a structured workouts, you build off of percentages of your FTP. We work out what your training zones are based on that. So if your workout is to do an hour-long Zone 2 ride and you've overestimated your FTP, you're actually working at tempo pace on that training ride, and you're training a completely different physiological energy system. So you're missing the point. So
you're missing out on those performance gains. Plus, you're going to chew yourself and spit yourself out. You're going to get destroyed. You're really going to feel that, because that will pile up over the course of time.
When you look at what the pro teams are doing now, most of them have gone away from FTP and they're working with actual threshold numbers. So they test their guys by taking blood samples and figuring out exactly what their lactate threshold is, LT2. What is that value? And then base your training zones around there. And then when they want to do another threshold test, they don't do it functionally. They go back to the lab. So they're always working. So their Zone 2 training or their Zone 4 training is spot on where it needs to be. They're actually targeting the energy system they're meaning to target.
Yeah. And it's not readily available to the average Joe's. You can't get the lactate testing stuff. When I say not readily available, I'm not talking about like you have to have prescription for this thing. It's just not easy to get, and it's not inexpensive.
I don't remember. Evan does it with Josh Monda. They both use those the strips, but I remember them telling me that it was like $2 per strip or something. Like it was expensive. And then I don't remember how much the little machine cost, but that's
probably
kind of
pretty petty,
yeah. And so I don't think it's.
But then you've got to have a good setup.
You have to have a good system,
the good protocol to go with it. So.
Right, exactly. And I think that they struggled with that. I think they struggled with that protocol for at least a few weeks when they were starting off.
But you see, those guys are perfect examples of somebody that needs to have an accurate picture of their FTP, because the racing they do as professional triathletes, it's all about being able to maintain that FTP power, right? That's everything. Get on your time trial bike and stare at your power meter and try to sustain that.
Yep, you're trying to have as little variance in power. Like we used to think about it as cheating with triathlon, whereas like if you knew your FTP and half the rest of the field that's out there doing the triathlon don't even have power meters, and you're like, oh, I know I hit this number, I come off the bike and I'm going to feel decent for a run. And like no one else did that. No one else was doing that back 10 years ago. It was like you just were cheating because you just knew yourself so much better than the rest of the field. So it was very handy.
Those sometimes triathletes don't do particularly well in regular bike racing. It's because they're not used to that variation in intensity. They're used to doing a warm up and then operating at FTP and then cooling down, and that's it. Whereas you go to your average road race, the intensity is all over the map, and you've got to be able to respond to that and adapt on the fly. So.
I might have noticed that in my road racing career, just being like, oh, now that I'm dropped, I'm good. I can just sit on certain watts and just.
Yeah.
Well,
finish this race out.
I mean, not even road racing, but like mountain biking. You do, like in a mountain bike race, you will do a higher wattage depending on the terrain as well. Okay, there's this quarter-mile climb that I need to drill it on because I know I'm going to get this rest over the top where I'm going to be just driving the bike and not
think about how many like really, really short little efforts you have to do just to get the bike over a certain, whatever, like
obstacle.
Exactly. Yeah. It's super interesting.
Mountain bike race is the most variable in terms of intensity.
And that's why
BMX I heard was like something insane, like where they have like, because those guys start up so fast.
Yes.
I heard the BMX has like crazy high, like short intensity.
Yes, crazy high power demands. But in a mountain, you think about a mountain bike race, the climbing is usually really hard, steep, intense climbs. And then the descents are often so technical that you're not pedaling at all. So you're going from max power to no power all the time.
I'm holding 600 watts for 2 minutes and then 0 for the next, 45 seconds.
To your point, that's the reason why I started riding on the road. I've talked about this before on the podcast. I started riding road bikes so I could get faster on the mountain bike based off of some coaching that I had or some, people that were telling me this is what you got to do. I'm like, all right, I'm all in. I want to get faster. And it was exactly because of that. You weren't doing the right kinds of training. You weren't breaking things up. And it's not that you didn't want to. It's just like you can't do that on a mountain bike. And I mean, you could technically go out and ride your mountain bike on the road, but it's kind of fun to go out and ride on the road on a road bike with other people on road bikes and structure it and have fun with it. And that's why I fell in love with the road.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah. I think my main message in all of this is if you don't have a particular high FTP at the moment, it is definitely worthy pursuit to try and push that number up, right? It does. It means that it's some way of quantifying if your training is being effective, if you can increase your FTP. However, if your FTP is not that high, all is not lost. You can still be competitive, especially if you're in events. If your events are, have a high variability of intensity. So I'm a perfect example. My FTP is not that great, but I've done well in a few races, depending on the course. Crafty old wanker.
You bloke.
Well, there's something to be said for sitting in the wheels, reading the moves, and going with the right moves, and being there at the end.
Yeah,
so,
that's the beautiful part about it.
Yeah.
How much improvement can you say somebody can make over the course of an off season? And I know that that's going to be relative to like where they're coming from, how long they've spent in the sport, how dedicated they want to be. I mean, but
you said it. It depends. It depends where you're starting from. For a newbie, somebody who's in their first year of taking this stuff seriously, you can make really good gains. You could make, I don't know, pull 20% down of my ass, maybe.
Okay, that's good to know. Let's say that you've been riding a little bit. You've never really done anything structured. You can't give me a solid answer of how many hours you average per week. And, but you go out and you ride your bike and whatnot. Like over the course of an off season, how do you think that person's probably going to show the most benefits by jumping on a structured program, getting a baseline FTP, jump on a structured program, and then like ride through the whole winter with the advice of a coach kind of like mentoring them and making sure that they're making all the right steps? I mean, is that your best, most optimized situation?
Yeah.
Do you need a coach to do this?
No, you don't. I mean, if you can afford a coach, it sort of takes the guesswork out of it. But then if you're an informed cyclist and you educate yourself, there's no reason why you can't put together your own structured training, whether you have the motivation to follow that without being accountable to somebody. That's a different matter.
That's the hardest thing with doing your own program.
Most cyclists will go out and do a bunch of training and wonder why they're not objectively making improvements. They take an FTP test, they go out and ride their bike 10 hours a week, all winter long, take another FTP test, and it's barely budged. Why is that? Well, because you've been wasting your training time doing junk miles, most likely.
That's very likely. There's another thing with FTP testing, in that it's hard to replicate. You actually have to learn how to do it the right way, and you have to be willing to suffer. And I feel like a lot of people just don't want to suffer like that. Like they might be willing to put in some of the work on the training side of things, but when it comes down to like, you have to pour yourself 100% into this test. You have to give it everything that you have, and you cannot give up until it's over so we can get that true baseline number on you. Yeah. There's a lot of people that might do that for you once. They don't want to do it again because it kind of sucks. It hurts. I mean, the only way that I can see that it's kind of fun is if you can find a segment that you can chase, and you have that rabbit out there, and you know that you have to go hard. And if you go hard, that you have like a little bit of a carrot at the end, like you got like in the top 10 or you got a KOM. That to me is better to chase than seeing what my FTP is at the very end. So
and I don't really like setting FTPs for my FTP tests for my guys because it is a lot of time it's not accurate, and like you said, it's a sufferfest.
It's hard to replicate.
It's hard to replicate. And what I prefer to do, if people have good data, like if they did a long race, say they did a road race, and then I'll look at their 20-minute power over that hardest effort they can do and go extrapolate that to what they could do.
The power curve.
Yeah, the power curve.
Power curve is such a fantastic, especially if you can look at a power curve over like a historical block of riding, like 2 years of riding. You can be like, oh.
As long as you have some representative rides in there.
That's a good point. Like this summer, you're in really good shape or wherever it is. For me, it's always like summertime when you get in better shape. It's like, oh, now you look at the power curve over the past, couple weeks, and it's like, oh, that looks pretty good.
So what are your thoughts on a lot of these new platforms? I think Training Peaks does it. I think Trainer Road might do it as well, but they're just taking the information that you're plugging into it based on your workouts and your rides and even your races to determine what your FTP is so that you don't actually have to go out there and do a test. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like we've just been saying, FTP tests suck.
Is it close enough? Is it valid?
It depends how recent the data is as well, because like we said before, your
crappy data in, crappy data out, right? Where it's like,
okay, so your FTP is going to vary throughout the year. So if you had a representative block of training that included a long effort, like a big time trial or something, within the last couple of weeks, within a close enough time frame, then that's a number you can definitely work with. If the data was from last summer at the height of the
100%.
season,
it has to be within.
It
has to be within a certain amount of time for sure. I mean, I can't tell you that my FTP is what it was, 2 years ago during the summertime when I was feeling good and doing the flogging ride for an hour and 15 minutes and finishing with 370 watt average. I mean, that's just not me right now. I'd be lucky if I was 170 watts, but
Apple Watch can estimate your FTP from bike riding.
Really?
Yeah. It's not good, but they'll get there, right? I mean, but they're basically the same thing we're talking about. They're looking at the power curve of a given couple of rides. And I think that they require like 3 or 4 rides at a decent effort, and they're going to try and estimate your FTP.
Sure.
So bad data in, bad data out, but they're using that kind of power curve to kind of figure out what they think you could do for an hour. It can be good. I think some companies are probably doing a better job than others. I don't currently trust Apple that much, but I wouldn't be surprised. Does Garmin do anything like that? I can't remember.
I think that they'll give you an estimated FTP if I'm not mistaken.
I think the data you get in that fashion is almost
crap.
Worthless. Like if you see a positive trend, then I guess it's worth something. But using it to set your training zones and structure your workouts, I don't think it's something you should do.
If you set your FTP too high and you go to do a workout and you're like,
that's the worst.
Yeah. Skip. decrease.
Or when you do a great effort and you do set your FTP correctly and you're like the next workout back, you're like, oh no. All of the workouts are hard now.
Yeah.
They're so hard.
When was the last time you guys actually did an FTP test? Can you even remember?
No.
I did one 3 weeks ago.
Did you really?
Work.
Yeah, outside, which is not real accurate.
Well, but it's accurate in a different way. Yeah. I feel like the trainer stuff it's always like you said, 30 watts. Where you're
30
like,
watts low.
Come on. Yeah.
But I did one outside on the Washougal Dike, starting from almost my house, because it's only a 20-minute segment, and I just tried to hold 320 for 20 minutes. I was not able to do that because there's stop signs, and there were 2 things that held me up, and it skewed the number.
I think it's very interesting. Like one of the conversations I've had with other cyclists is like, where can you go in your local area for a 20-minute test?
Yeah, Larch Mountain.
I mean, a better test would be to do an actual time trial or to go for a longer Strava segment, and that way you've got the motivation to push yourself, and then go back and look at the data. Say, oh, how much power did I manage to maintain for 20 minutes? Times that by 0.95, right? Take 5% off. Should give you a reasonable estimate.
It's still a game. I think that depends on where you're listening to this podcast from. But finding a 20-minute effort where there's no stop signs, there's no traffic, there's no turns because you're going to ease up on something.
There's no sustained downhills.
Yep,
because it's hard to keep.
If you could have a steady incline, I feel like that's the most ideal situation. But it's hard to find those. Mount Limit, for sure.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. So next time you're there.
I mean,
I'm sure
I guess the
did an
most
FTP
accurate test is
as
to ride as hard as you can for 1 hour, but like nobody wants to do that.
No.
That would suck.
No, not at all. So yeah, Vancouver Lake and Gibson. Those are the two places that I've done them since I've lived here.
Gibson.
So,
Oh, Gibson Hill. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
even
that's a
Vancouver
good
Lake-
test. That's about a 20-minute
It's hard to
climb,
go hard like on the flats like that. I feel like it's hard
yeah.
to dig in.
At Lacamas Lake or not Lacamas?
At Vancouver Lake.
Vancouver Lake. I don't know. I think it's
You
good.
run out of real estate there.
You have to do one turnaround. There's no way around it. But
you have to turn around.
Yeah. If you start like closer to the railroad tracks, closer to town, and then you go all the way out to the very end and turn around, yes, you have that 3 second or 4 second turnaround, but you can like kind of sprint into it, brake hard, and then turn around and sprint out of it. And that's not ideal, but it's pretty good if you want to try and keep it flat.
The Gibson's not bad either, but there's a flat downhillish section where it's you can't help but like rest.
That's
when
where
you hit it.
You just have to do. You have to do what you got to do. There's a couple like short downhill sections, and you just have to like look at your power meter, and you have to push, and you have to pedal through. You have to like, all right, these are the watts that I think I've been averaging. I have to keep averaging that on the downhill.
There's 2 sections on that climb where I can't do them under 400 watts. I'm just too big.
Going up Gibson?
You gotta dig.
Yeah.
Dig in.
Just to keep upright. I have to push over 400 watts, and then I'm like skewing the data. So, but anyway,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I got to. Are we okay on time? I'm running. Got to go up to the high school cross country practice anymore.
Gotcha. Anything else you want to talk about on the FTP side
I
of things?
just wanted to touch on. I think it's important the best ways to increase your FTP.
Yeah.
So there is
drugs.
Yeah.
There's some good interval types. There's some very specific interval training that works really well. I did want to mention a couple of scenarios. One is if a guy came to me and they had an FTP of 250, but they were a relative beginner cyclist and they haven't been training that long. It may well be that their actual aerobic, their capacity, their VO2 max is they haven't reached their genetic ceiling, right? They haven't pushed their VO2 max up to as hard as it can go because they've spent a lot of time just riding their bikes and never really focused on that super intense efforts you need to push up the very high end of your power. So you may have an FTP in that case that's 90% of your max power. So, but you're still not that fit. Mm-hmm. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
So in that case,
yeah,
for those athletes, there's a real benefit in doing super high intensity VO2 max type workouts to bump up the ceiling, which drags your threshold power with it. And then on the other end of the scale, you have people who don't have that very much endurance. Mm-hmm. Okay, so zone 2, they can maintain that kind of 200 watts or that kind of conversational pace for, 30 minutes instead of 2 hours, 3 hours. And that means their aerobic systems are underdeveloped. They're not very efficient at producing energy aerobically through their mitochondria.
Gotcha.
In that case, more training in that zone 2 can in fact push the whole curve to the right so that you going into your FTP, into your more intense zones with less lactate and its byproducts, so less acidity in your blood to begin with. Mm-hmm. So having a good aerobic base, having a well-developed system of, converting oxygen into energy, that helps push up your FTP from the other side.
Sure. If I can just make a comment on that real quick too. If you are relatively new or you're returning or it's been a while or you've never found your genetic potential and you're being challenged, don't go into this with the mindset of like you need instant gratification or you need to increase your FTP by 30% over the next 3 or 4 months. That's just not sustainable. You are going to break down. And you're going to end up losing the enjoyment and the passion and the love for the sport. Be on a structured program, but find fun in it as well. Yeah. You need to have some fun in there.
Sure.
Make sure it's structured. Make sure you're doing it right. And just know that this is a sport that you get to layer up over the course of time. It's not a one-off season and all of a sudden you're going to be a beast on the bike. I mean, that's going to happen and you very well could. But what I want to see is you to be here for a long time, because I've seen people take 5, 6, 7, 8 years, 10 years to kind of find some of their potential limits. Some of us are kind of getting up there in age a little bit and maybe we don't have 5 to 10 years, but at the end of the day, just enjoy the ride, take a reasonable approach to it. There's no quick return in the sport really.
No, absolutely. I agree with you for 100%. I will say though, that at some point you'll figure out that you need to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
You've had years and years of having fun on the bikes and going out and beating yourself up and your friends up, and at some point you think, I'm either going to get out of this completely and find a different sport, or I'm going to take it up a notch.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Learning how to suffer on the bike that's a learned skill. I mean, you get to a stage if you do it right and you don't abuse that process going into it where you get totally burned out. You get to a stage, and I'm sure Lance can speak to this, you kind of are a little bit of a masochist. You go out there and you punish yourself on purpose, and people look at you like, why did you just do that? Why did you just go ride for 4 or 5 hours and do all of these intervals and race people and do all this crazy stuff, and you can barely move, and you're just sitting over there with a smile on your face like, I'm dead right now, but I can't wait to do that again.
That's my wife every day.
You might very well find that, but that can't be your mantra all the time. I mean, that's
no, and it doesn't always work.
No,
beating yourself up on your bike every single day, thinking that the more I do, the better I'm going to get. That's definitely not the way to go.
Yeah,
we know that the adaptations to your training happens when you stop training, when you rest.
Yeah,
that's so. You've got to be smart about this, right? Yeah. You got to not waste. If raising your FTP or being competitive is what you've decided you want to do right now, you have to stop wasting your time on the bike and make every mile you cycle count for something. What is the goal of this training ride?
Sure.
What am I training right now?
Sure. Just a couple of little tips or little words of wisdom here. It's that time of year where you're doing a lot of your training on the inside. We already talked about this. Please, please, please don't forget that you need to adjust your power numbers for riding indoors, because you're going to be in the wrong zones. You're going to fall apart. Your body's going to hurt. You're going to get burned out. You're going to hate the sport. You're not going to want to ride on your trainer, and the wheels are going to fall off. It happens. It happens to the best of us. So make sure you adjust accordingly. Find time in your schedule to try and ride your bike outside. And if you can, ride with others that have a same goal or same common purpose in mind, so that you can have that whole misery loves company if it's crappy weather out, or you guys can stick to the plan and, keep Lance tempered so he's not trying to chase every tennis ball running down the street here.
But KOMs.
KOMs, guys. And just, if you've got the capacity, work with a coach. If you don't have the capacity to work with a coach, be well educated. Go out there. There is a ton of information. You can jump on Ian's little blog post right here, dialperformancecoaching.com. All things FTP. Go read this up. Educate yourself. Follow some sort of a trainer structured program, and don't become like kind of passion blind. Don't become like so narrow focused and start making excuses for yourselves or not see the bigger picture. Let somebody objectively help you. If you can't afford a coach, like find a friend and explain to them what they're trying to do. And hopefully they're, like on the bike. Like if I'm trying to come back and I've got all these like crazy ideas of what I want to do and I'm going to go do this, and I lean on Lance a little bit. He's like, hey, you need to temper this a little bit, or maybe do that. Or it might be a day where I'm like, I'm just like, whatever. I'm just whatever and burn out. Like Lance will come over and he'll beat on my door. He's like, we're going for a ride, Jackhole. And he's done that a bunch of times. And I'm like, always thankful that that's happened. So find these connections, remember these things, educate yourself. And this can be a much more enjoyable process. And then if you do have a coach, make sure that you're in constant communication with them. They are the person that's going to be the one flying at 50,000 feet, looking at the big picture, looking at what you're doing, understanding all of the steps of why you're doing. And hopefully they're tuned into like you as a person, because we're all different people. I mean, we all train differently. We all have different like physiological capacities. We're all different. And the coach is usually someone that's got a ton of experience that can draw upon different personal experiences or different experiences working with other clients or different friends and racing and all these things. They got this global view. They should be able to look at you and say, this is what you need to do. So find yourself a good coach.
Thanks, mate.
Sorry.
A lot of my guys right now are doing these, at least once a week, they're doing these lactate shuttle type intervals, which they hate. But
is that why you hear this F. Ian Gibson?
Yeah,
Jack Hall.
Ask Mario. Lactate shuttle intervals, but very effective.
Yeah.
I would say very effective. So,
How often do you communicate with your clients?
as often as they need, they can call me anytime.
Okay.
Usually, I have to remind them, hey, it's part of your.
Yeah.
It's part of the program.
Do you put
Call
the onus
me.
on them, or do you call them yourself and touch base with them like, hey, or do you, are you,
depends. Yeah, both
I'm
ways,
guessing
yeah.
you're monitoring their workouts.
Yes.
If you see something that's like a little askew, like that's not right. Let's fix that. Or that was great. Let me like give them a little pat on the back for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the way it works all the time is feedback
Sure.
in both directions. So.
Cool. All right. Sorry, I rambled on there. I think that's enough because we're getting a little long here and Matt's got to go do cross country things. Matt, one last thing. I think you did a MazeFit video.
MazeFit T-Rex 3.
Yep.
Yes, I posted that video yesterday.
I watched it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like,
I'm surprised. You're the one.
yeah.
You're the
No,
one.
I was like almost just under 4,000.
Under 4,000
I
people
think it was like
watched
your 128th kudos or something
Okay.
like that. So
Good.
I don't usually watch the AmazeFit videos.
I know,
I'm like,
right? It's not your
I
thing.
kind of want to watch this for some reason. So I
Yeah,
watch it. It's
'cause
good.
I remember I was talking about that
Yeah.
one, and it's like it's got a lot of good stuff going for it. The price is ridiculously low. So
I'm still amazed by that. Doesn't have a flashlight, but the price.
Fit.
There you go. But
It's in their name. They have to amaze you.
Yeah.
It's an interesting watch. If you're interested, check it out. The video is up on my YouTube channel. YouTube channel is youtube.com/mlegrand, I think, something like that. Or you just search for Matt Legrand, and you're gonna find two people you might want to follow that way. So
have you ever to this
never heard from him?
Have you ever reached out to him?
No.
Come on, dude. You can have him like write you like
A
an
song?
intro song or something like that, or some like theme music for the channel.
If we could do that.
Dude, that would be fantastic. I mean, you're crushing him in the follower department. So
You know what? On Spotify, he has a ton of followers.
I didn't even think about the Spotify.
So you make a playlist.
I might have to do that. Bumper music.
Yes. That's it.
Cool. Thank you, sir. Ian, you got one last thing for us?
Yeah. If you are on Dial Cycling Team or if you ride in the Portland, Vancouver area, you are heartily welcome to join us on our new Saturday winter training rides. So we're going to...
I saw these and I was so pissed. I can't freaking go to these. I love that route.
Well, it's going to go definitely through the end of January at least. So we're looking at a 2-month block.
All right.
And the idea is so that everybody can get in some base miles.
Good.
So it's good. It's like 64-mile course, and we're going to ride it at Zone 2. So it's not the usual
Good luck with that.
dialed thrash fest. We're going to do it not absolutely all weather conditions. Like if it's super extreme, raining sideways or snowing or icy, we're not going to do it. But otherwise, we'll meet up. It's 10 o'clock. At Heritage Park.
It should roughly be 3.5, 4 hours, right?
Yeah. And you can drop out early if the base is too high, but if you're off the front and sprinting for stop signs, don't expect everybody to follow us, although it is tempting, I know. But it's going to be a Zone 2 pace.
Good.
Yeah. 10 o'clock, Heritage Park at Lacamas Lake, Saturdays through end of February.
Hey, jump on Dialed
January.
Cycling's Strava Club if you want to get the invite or the details on that.
Yeah.
Cool. Hepler.
I got nothing.
Freaking Hepler.
Nothing.
Nothing?
I don't know. I heard the cyclocross
We're going to
race is
California
happening
next week.
Yeah, Ian and I are going to California next week for a few days just to ride in the sunshine, hopefully. So
Freaking retired jackals.
we'll see how that goes. That's it.
Cool. My one last thing is, and I told you guys this right before we started the podcast, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good that the surgery that I had went really well, and I'm just kind of like mending from that. But I got a little message, and that was the part that was like the last looming thing, and my report came back that I don't have cancer. That's pretty cool.
Hooray.
Yay. So anyway, again, more on that in the future, but I am thankful for that. I'm thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for this podcast and all of our listeners. On that note, you guys have anything else to say? Didn't think so.
That's it.
We will be back next week with another one of these. And until then, bye for now.
How'd the run go?
Pretty good. I finished.
That's great.
Why is that great?
Because he accomplished something.
What was your mile time?
About 7.
I could beat that on a skateboard.
Well, that has wheels.
Yeah, well, my feet don't, and I could still crush that time.